Welcome back to another episode of Matters of the Heart and Soul podcast. This is your host, Russell Bruce. Today we have two special guests here, and one is a first timer, Mr. Cylk Cozart, and it's Skizzy Scott Moesta, my former college roommate, one of my best friends back in 1982, his baseball coach and my basketball coach. I guess they tried an experiment to see if you get these two left-handed freshman athletes from diverse backgrounds, to kind of stay together in the dorm. And from day one, we just been the best of friends and remain in touch.
Yeah, been brothers ever since.
Yeah, he's on the left coast, I'm on the right. And through Scott, I met Cylk. And today this is really about Cylk and his upcoming book called Questions. And, what can we say about this guy? Most of you may know him from his acting career. He was in White Men Can't Jump, School Days, and so many more. He's been in over 30 movies, over 25 television series, much more. He's a humanitarian. Like this guy, they're about to name a parkway after him. So he's like a living legend. Yeah, and one of the things that I really like about this guy is he's a former basketball player.
I want you two to go hold it up. I'll cheer from the sidelines.
Yeah. So before we get to Cylk, Scott, tell us how you and Cylk know each other. You guys actually do business together.
Yeah. So we met about 5 years ago, I would say, 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah, and we met through another filmmaker that did a movie that ended up being a shyster. But anyways, I saw that. But and Cylk and I, we got on the phone several times and we talked about all kind of different things. Most of it revolved around spirituality. And we talked a lot about near-death experiences with Russ. I'm big into that. And we just became good friends. And we just kind of stayed in contact. And now we're here and I introduced you to him. And yeah, so happy to be on this thing, man.
Yeah, good stuff. So back to you, Cylk. I would do you a disservice trying to introduce you properly. Because you've done so many different things in so many different aspects. So why don't you just give us a brief synopsis of who is Cylk Cozart?
He's still learning who he is. I was raised in Tennessee, and like most young guys, you grow up, you want to, do what your father did. My dad was a cop, so I thought I was going to be a cop. When I was real young. So that didn't work out when I saw what happens, in the real days and nights, what they really do. He said, you ain't going to be a cop. So I knew then at 5 years old, I knew I wasn't going to do that. So, and you know how it is. You watch TV, you see shows, you see movies, and when you're a kid, you just feel you could do anything. And I didn't think there was anything that I couldn't do. It wasn't from an egotistical point of view. It was from a creative, just a wanting thing. And basketball did real well for me. And once I got to college, at high school, I didn't get to play how I really wanted to because I was 2 years younger than everybody in my grade. Because in the 60s, they had this thing called busing. So I was bused from an all-black school, elementary, not junior high. Back then, it was no junior high. From an elementary all-black school, small one, to an all-white school. And it was, pretty traumatic for me. During that time, my first year there, I went to a dance. The only girls and guys there were white. So I just up dancing with everybody, same, there's no big deal. The next day, I found my German Shepherd, my dog King, hanging from a tree, and with a bullet shot in his head. So and notes and all around the yard saying, we don't want you here. Go back, using certain language. And so that's how it kind of started out in high school. So I took sports, as I'm sure you did, Russell, too. And you, Scott, it kind of, sports gave you a little outlet, you could actually, you know, the harder you work, the better you get kind of thing, you know. And I used football and basketball as a springboard. I just wanted to get out of there. So I got out of there, went to junior college first, Montreat Anderson Junior College in North Carolina, just outside of Asheville in Black Mountain. Really school, Christian school. And did okay there, graduated from there and transferred to King College, which is now King University. Played, on the basketball team. Had a tryout when I left there, had a tryout with the Nuggets. I fractured my left foot in the third day. I thought my life was over, because all I wanted to do was play ball. I told everybody, I went to college to play basketball. And they go, well, what's your major? I said, basketball. No.
Hey, you know what's funny? With Russell and me?
Yeah.
Same thing. He was there to play. He went to college. We both had scholarships. He was there to play basketball, and I was there to play baseball. That was what we did.
I bet your grades were pretty good. I bet they were better than mine.
I don't know. They're okay.
I didn't think anything other than playing ball when I was there. That and girls, And by the time I kind of settled in, I was like, wait a minute. I got to maintain a certain average. So I got in touch with the smartest person I knew to help me get going. And so that helped me at both schools. But, I didn't realize it was going to be that tough. I didn't realize academically I went to two pretty tough schools because I just fell in love with the coach, with the campus. The professors, most of them lived in these little cottages in the hills. And if, you could go to their house at night and you go, Miss Johnson, I didn't understand quite chapter 16. And they'll come in and listen, come in, sweetheart, have some tea and coffee or cookies, And when I left there, I knew all about chapter 16, so it was very intimate that way. And I just wish I'd, studied a little bit harder. I didn't study as hard as I should have, but I didn't really know this was going to happen, but I thought you go to learn. And when I started questioning things about, you have to study the Bible. You got morning class every day. You have to read the Bible, and you have classes and your other things. But I would ask these questions, and people would go, "What is he talking about? Don't you believe in God?" I was like, "Yeah, I love God's in me," kind of thing. So I didn't get a diploma, but I had everything to graduate. But they kind of made up some things that says, well, you're not going to be able to get your diploma. You're a few hours short. But they told me that 2 weeks before the graduation.
And after you questioned it.
Yeah, that was pretty tough to take. So I had a tryout. That's when I had my tryout with the Nuggets after that. And then when I got hurt, it's when I kind of licked my wounds and went to Miami and started modeling, doing commercials, got into film industry. First movie was with Andy Garcia called Blue Skies Again, about the first girl to play for a professional baseball team, Scott.
Nice.
Based on a true story. And so I just love Miami, the modeling, the music and everything. Then went to New York from there. I got a contract with ABC to do a soap opera, but they just wanted to take you for 3 years and decide where they're going to put you. So I just did little one-liners here and there, and got to learn the business a lot in New York. Did a lot of theater, and then went to LA because before I went to LA, I was up for the Cosby Show, and it was between me and the gentleman that got it for the older sister's boyfriend. And here's what I learned in New York: you don't say anything until it's 100%. Because the way they brought me in a limo to Brooklyn. I met Bill Cosby and Tom and Marcy Carsey, the producers, and Jay Sanders, the director. And they were saying, "Oh, we love what you're doing. We love the things you make up. You're going to be great for the show." Well, to me, that meant I got the part.
Yeah.
I call my mom, my dad, my aunt, everybody that was my family, friends. I said, "I'm going to be on the Cosby Show. I'm going to be on the Cosby Show." So New York Energy, my agent calls me in about 4 days later And I was like, when are we going to get a contract? How's that going to work? He says, well, it's not going to work out. I went, what's not going to work out? He says, Bill Cosby thought you were very funny and you're real talented and you got a great career ahead of you. But he felt like if you were spending the night over the Huxtable's house, that you wouldn't stay in your room. You would sneak. And I was like, what kind of feedback is that for? You know,
I know, right?
I'm thinking I'm an actor. So that was, you know, when you're up for the biggest show, the number one show in the country, where do you go from there? I went to LA because I was so hurt. And I was more hurt by it because I told my family. I thought they were going to think I was a liar. You know,
Yeah, that's the worst, man.
People don't realize what you go that your family is an extension of yourself. So when you hurt, they hurt. When you get married, they get married. You marry everybody in the family just about. So that was tough. So that's kind of where, you know, right there before I met Ron Shelton and Spike Lee and all those great directors in Hollywood. So that's kind of where I. Does that give you a little bit?
Yeah, no, that's a good synopsis. So let's back up just a little bit. You talked about being bused from your all black school to an all white school, right?
68.
So tell us a little bit about your ethnic background.
My mom is Cherokee, from the Cherokee Nation here in Tennessee. And my dad is black. He's from Tennessee. And they met when my mom was 14 and got married when she was 16. Had me when she was 16. Mm-hmm. But it was just me and her. And then she had problems as a 16-year-old, in the 60s with a biracial child. It was very tough for her. And my dad wasn't around. So like many children experience. So I was adopted into my father's family. They were like grandparents and, godly people, went to church. I did everything they did, but they taught me that everybody is, deserves to be greeted with a smile. They were that kind of folks. So I learned empathy from them. And so that's kind of where I didn't know if that answered.
No, that's good because it's a good segue into questions because it gives people a good background about who you are and things you've experienced, how you could actually come to be who you are. Because I think everybody's total life experience make them who they are, right?
I believe that.
Yeah, the good, bad, ugly, the indifferent. Like I like to say, things aren't always happening to you; they're happening for you, right?
That's a good quote.
They're making like write that one down. It's all yours, brother. So here we are with questions. Let's jump into questions. What brought about questions?
A question.
A lot of questions.
Well, as time went on after the college situation, I didn't really think too much about it. And I thought, wait a minute, how many other people have had questions their whole life that you were told to shut up or you don't? I've actually had grown people when I was a child asking questions saying, you don't need to know all that. You don't need to know everything. I'm like, but don't you get smarter if you learn stuff? It was very confusing. So I would ask questions like, when you learn about, let's say, church, I was in church like twice a week. I was altar boy. I took up collection, all that stuff. Cut grass, the church yard every Saturday, there was nobody more dedicated to the Bible than me. I went to Bible summer projects, played, Athletes in Action is a Christian organization, pro basketball team, kind of semi-pro. So I always was around the church and Christians. And I always felt like if I asked questions, they would, they would hate me. And then a lot of things happen because if you're not able to express yourself. So as I got older, I thought, well, I can ask anything I want now. I can, I started talking to people in different denominations and as I traveled as a model, especially I'd be in Africa, one week and the next week be in Paris, and you meet people, and you see that there might be some smarter people than you think you are, you know,
Mhm.
and and what I love about playing basketball especially, you learn teamwork. You learn that as a team, you're so strong, and I equated that with church and everything else. And when I ask questions like, I don't know if you want to get into that right now about what certain questions were, but my first question
Let's
was,
do it.
I didn't enjoy being baptized at 6 years old. And I don't think any 6-year-old knows why they're being submerged in a creek. They took me in a place called Beaver Creek here, and I never saw a beaver, but anyway, it's called Beaver Creek. And used to go fishing there with my dad and my other friends. And now I got sprinkled as a 3-year-old, and the church said, well, that doesn't count. God doesn't count that. You have to be submerged. So 3 years later, I'm at Beaver Creek with the congregation of 20, 22 people on the side, like cheering me on like some event. And I'm thinking, what is going on? And I still didn't know why I was being baptized. I just was told, you have to be baptized or you're going to go to hell. And they told me what hell was. And I was like, I don't want to go there. I don't care how old you are. What, when somebody tells you there's some red devil with pitchfork down there, you're like, hey, I'm good. So I craved the church, for years. So
Fear.
I started doing door-to-door stuff, just talking about the Bible and things, and they send you out on summer programs. And when it really hit me, people were asking me questions that I did not have an answer to. I felt stupid. And they were like, so you've read the Bible, young man? I'd say, yes, a lot of it. They would say, well, why didn't Jesus talk about Adam and Eve? And I was like, and slavery. Why would a God make slaves out of people and then say he likes these people over here better than every? That sounds like a man talking or writing. And then when I realized, by the time I got to a Christian college, and diving into it, I was fascinated with the Bible. But then every time I would have a question, nobody would want to talk about it. And I thought, this is strange, that you just got to have belief. You got to just believe. You're not allowed to ask questions. I was like, that's insane. Who would do that?
It is, because it takes away control.
Bingo. But then in the medical field, we're not still doing things from the first century. Mm-hmm. We don't still study that. We moved away science, obviously. So why, spiritually, we can't grow. We got to do what they did 2,000 years ago. And I would ask these kind of questions. I would say, well, when Jesus, the night before he got crucified, and the disciples were around him, he was talking, and they fell asleep, right? It's right there. And in red, Jesus is speaking, and he says, I'm paraphrasing exactly what, but you fell asleep on my last day, or what, how could you do that? And I asked my minister I said, if they were asleep, who wrote that? And he said, what do you mean? It's in red. Jesus said that. I said, so Jesus wrote that? No, he said that. I said, but who wrote what he said if everybody was asleep? And I'm thinking, is that a bad question? And they wouldn't talk to me. They said, you don't need to know all these things. And so I was 16, right before I graduated high school. I was asking those kind of questions. So anyway, that's kind of how the question started. And when years after I realized, since I didn't have my diploma, I was like, you know what? I was going to do what I do anyway, with or with the diploma. This is what I did. And so I got angry and I said, you know what? I'm just going to write a book. Just call it Questions. And anybody that's ever wanted to know and couldn't talk and were told to shut up, you can come to this arena without anger, without being, pointing fingers or none of that stuff, and just, have a conversation. I think that's important.
You know what I love, Cylk, is the humility in your spirit when you wrote it. And you even say, this isn't I'm not doing this to humiliate anyone. I'm doing it to liberate. And that was very profound to me
Thank
that you said that. And guys, so sorry. I gotta let my dog in the door. He's scratching.
You better let that dog in the door.
Yeah. So Cylk, I actually second what he said. I thought it was very humble, and it was very tactful too, because
thank you.
Over the years, I've been in a lot of conversations with these type of questions, right?
Right.
And they're not received like cordially in most cases, but you're written off as a kook and all that. But I from the time I was little, I had questions, right? But one of the ones, I asked them to myself and to anybody that I think might listen without trying to chop my head off, right? So I always would ask people.
They love you.
I said one day I was going to write an essay like, did Adam have a belly button? So if Eve came from his rib, why did they draw pictures of Adam with a belly button? Like, wouldn't that mean he had an umbilical cord and he was cut from the womb of a woman?
You don't want to get me started.
Well, no, this is what we're here to talk about. Let's talk about all of this stuff, man.
What did that ever get answered?
Well, I can tell you what I think, right?
Okay.
So I think it's hogwash for one. I don't think that woman came from a man's rib, and I think that a lot of scripture is metaphor, soliloquies. And like, for example, here's my take on the whole Adam and Eve thing, right? So you have a woman is XX chromosome, right? A man is an X and a Y.
That's right. So
if you look at a Y is like an X with the kickstand missing, right?
Yeah.
So, and when you start studying, you see that the Y chromosome has less than a quarter of the chromosomes and DNA of an X, which shows that it's a mutation and it's not as old.
Right.
The X chromosome is older, so mitochondria is way older. So it's like, and when you talk about genetics and dominance, you could get the recessive from the dominant, but you can't get the dominant from the recessive.
No.
And you can get a man from a woman, but you can't get a woman. So that's my take on it. That's the short version.
You can try all day long.
Well, you can go in a lab and do some stuff, but still, the mitochondria DNA is that one thing that all of us are made out of. So, and then here's the last part on this, and I'd like to hear you two give your take on it. Okay. Is I asked, so why did that only pertain to us? Like, what about the animal kingdom? So did the female lioness come from the male lion rib in the chimpanzee? Like, where does this end? Like,
you're not supposed to know everything.
Yeah.
Well, I've been told that one plenty of times, right?
Yeah, and if you I studied paleoanthropology for a really long time, for like 10 years. I read probably 20 books on it, and everything that exists today evolved from the past. Plants, animals, us, everything, and so it never made sense to me, the Adam and Eve story. I think it was just ancient people trying to somehow explain how we came into existence. But little did they know that even Native Americans were here 25, 30,000 years ago before that story even started. And by the way, that's another point when you talk about the whole Noah's Ark story.
Oh, yeah. We got to talk about that.
The Native Americans were here. They've never had an interruption in their history, right? It's always been a smooth history. And if that had happened, did every Native American die and then re-migrate from Mongolia back into the North America and establish their society and their culture again? Like, none of that.
Same way the sloth would go all the way from Central America to Mesopotamia. It would take them 75 million years.
Anyway, go. What about a kangaroo?
Oh, yeah.
Or an Arctic fox?
The point the point is, oh, I'm sorry if you're not finished. Go ahead.
No. Go.
I was just going to say the point that I see, that I've seen about that, is that at that time, 99% of the people were illiterate. So they depended on the clergy and people with serious money, whatever, to tell them what the Bible said. You know, it's gone through so many changes. At one point, you would get killed if you were caught reading the Bible in certain places. So, I mean, God didn't write that. He doesn't want to see us do stuff like that's man. So when they started talking about the wars and rumors of wars and all that happened 2,000 years ago to present, and at that time, the ones that the God of the Bible said, destroy that whole city, don't leave anybody, babies and everything. And that I just couldn't understand that. And I said that as I got older, I said and then save the virgins for yourself.
Yeah, Deuteronomy. Exactly. I'm like,
don't insult us like that. You know, I mean, really. And tithing, God doesn't need our money. That's from this. So when I learned, when you actually read the Bible, people don't really read it. They read a little verse here and a verse there, and they sum up the whole chapter. I'm like, well, at least read the whole chapter, you know. And I said, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are American names, right?
Yeah.
And Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John did not write down what they were doing on a daily. They didn't have nobody following them around taking notes. They wrote letters, and 50 to 70 years after they died. Now, this is not Cylk Cozart Ama talking. This is history, and everybody has an opportunity to read history. If you just do it, you'll see that those letters were passed from Greek to Arabic, and things mean different things. When I went to Africa for the first time, I heard a man talking. He had some camels. He had a bunch of camels where I was staying, and I heard him on the phone, and he said, "Yeah, the eye of the needle, the eye of the needle." And I'm thinking, well, that's a verse, you know, and I thought took literal, and a lot of other people still to this day, grown people, take this literal, that a camel can't get through an eye of a needle, sewing needle. It's easier for that to happen than a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And I always thought, well, that's just that's not literal. That's got to be. And
a metaphor.
I asked the man when he hung up the phone, I said, what is the eye of the needle? He said, that's the low area in the fence. The camels get out. It's hard for them to do it. They can do it, but they get out. They turn sideways and they wiggle until they get up, and then they get up and they go. And I went, the eye of the needle. So I called my mom right after that. I went, Mom, I have the needle. I'm in Africa, right? And the eye of the needle is I told her that, and she goes, honey, okay. And I said, so they didn't mean literally the camel go through the eye of a needle that we think. She goes, well, honey, I'm not going to say anything, but if it's in the Bible, it's true. So that's what I had to deal with. You know, I couldn't even go home and talk to my mom about it because she's hardcore. She actually folds her hand to this day. She's 86 years old. Folds her hand in a prayer position, kneels down, can barely walk on, kneels down by the bed and prays like this. You think I'm going to mess with that? Oh, heck no. I learned a lesson my freshman year in college when I started learning about King James and who King James was, and
man,
what he did, and how he had his mother killed, and how he liked young boys and things. And that's the way it was. That's fact. That's history. That's documented history.
Well, and before we move on that one right there, because I hear that one a lot. His mom died when he was like 1. She was like locked up for killing his dad.
But he had a mother that they call a mother, and a mother that raised him was different. So
gotcha.
They don't make the distinction.
Yeah, good distinction.
That's the thing.
Yeah, finish what you were saying, because I'm gonna tell you something on that.
Okay.
I've read
so
up on it.
I said, Mom, I learned this about King James and things, and he wasn't a really nice man like everybody says. And she goes, I don't want to hear that. I know my Bible, King James. That's the Bible. So again, I couldn't even have a conversation with my own mother. So so tell me
what happens when you talk to a hardcore literalist Christian.
Fundamentalist
Is it explodes their world. and their beliefs. And if they don't have a if they don't have a critical mind, it makes their whole world dissolve in what they've believed their whole life. And I've had many conversations. My mom's the same as you, same as your mom. You know, you can't even, I don't even have that conversation with her because I know I'm just going to be talking to a wall,
Yeah.
you know, but
Yeah.
it completely disrupts what they've believed their whole life. And I've talked to many other Christian people, and I found that it's better just to not even, if I know they're like that, don't even talk to them, man, because it just disrupts them so much that their whole world crumbles. And
You can ask,
if they're not a critical thinker, they're going to, like, their head will explode.
well,
you know?
You can ask one question to people that are fundamentalists, that are very, think the Bible is without flaw. You say, do you believe that the Bible is without flaw, that it's perfect? And if they say, oh, absolutely, then the conversation is over. There's nothing to talk about. They're not gonna. What do you think? They're not gonna. They're gonna believe Jonah got swallowed by a whale, and days later, he threw him up, and he didn't nothing. I mean, I'm not saying that. You can't. The person that says something that's true is the person that has to prove that's true, not the person that doesn't believe it, who's asking, hey, how did that happen? Well, I don't have to tell you that.
Yeah.
You got to believe it. So when you're taught as a child that these things are real, and if you don't believe that, I'm talking about basic Christian, how my life was, it stays with you the rest of your life. And if you're challenged on something, it's challenging your well-being because it's a part of you that long. And that's why.
Yes. Exactly.
So let's back up to King James for a second, because one of the things that they totally eliminate out of the school system when they're talking about the foundation of the United States, when the 13 colonies were established, Virginia being the first colony, right?
Yeah.
King James is the one that wrote the charter.
Sure
so
did.
King James writes the charter around 1608. And then they start bringing all the prisoners and prisoners of war, all the people they want to get rid of in Europe. They start sending them into the colonies, right?
Yes.
And so we could really give him credit for helping start the slave trade, right? So that's where Jamestown, Virginia is named after King James. And then, like, after him is his son, King Charles I, and grandson, King Charles II. Those 13 colonies, these were the guys that set it all up. But, like, they were struggling initially, right? Because he was the King of England and the King of Scotland at the same time, right?
Yeah.
And they were struggling to keep up with Spain. They seen him coming back from the Americas with all the gold and all this other stuff. And they were struggling, and they're like, well, maybe we could use religion. So then you get the Bible in 1611.
And that's
King
why
James
Council of
Version.
Nicaea in 325. That
Constantine, same exact scenario.
Constantine wasn't the most religious person. He didn't sanction Christianity because he was a Christian or so loved what was going on. That was a strategic thing for political reasons for him. He knew he had to have one entity of power. And
that's right.
I mean, it's brilliant, really. But
exactly.
Yeah,
because go for it.
Russell, you remember a long time ago we were talking about Christianity and the fact that there's a dozen other stories of a Messiah in past cultures: the Babylonians, the Sumerians, the Greeks, the Persians, India. There's a bunch of other stories that predates, right? And I was like, and I don't know if you remember this, but I asked you, I was like, how come those didn't catch on, but the current Jesus that we have now caught on and became widespread? And he just said, the Holy Crusades. I was like, bam.
Well, Cylk, you bring that up in your book, but one of the things, there's a good book out there called 16 Crucified Saviors Before Christ by Kersey Graves, which goes into that. And part of it is, and I'll mention another book, Scott, that I mentioned to you and Angel that day, is Evolution and Origin of Religion by Albert Churchward, when he talked about the stellar, lunar, solar cults, all this other stuff, right? So if you look, all these messiahs that we're mentioning right here are solar messiahs. Like, and Jesus is the latest of the solar sun messiahs. That's why they tie them to December 25th for the birth date, right?
Winter solstice.
Right, the winter solstice, because what happens is, you know, the sun is a quick version because I can go all into it. I'm trying not to get scientific, but actually on December 22nd, the sun dies on the proverbial cross. So if you took your watch, you got 1 through 12, right? You drew a pie, 4 quarters, and the sun travels throughout the celestial gate throughout the month, and it dies smack dab in the middle of the cross for 3 days from December 22nd through the 25th, right? And well, 22nd, 23rd, 24th, right? And so people who worship the sun, their sun god, the son of God, dies on the cross. And then December 25th is the birth or the rebirth of the sun.
So here's a question. The story of Jesus's crucifixion, that takes place at Easter, right? Which is the spring equinox, by the way.
Right.
And Easter
Esther is really where
is Esther, the fertility god. Eggs and bunnies. Dude, it's so like, you know, so how does that coincide? Because December 25th is the birth of Jesus, according to that, right? But then Easter is the crucifixion and resurrection, right? I don't know how those two coincide exactly.
You want to tackle that one, Cylk, or you want me to say?
I mean, I know it's because it's been rewritten so many times. They can't correlate. It's not going to happen. It didn't happen that way because there's no way. It's like the Noah's Ark thing. But let's stay on this. But I definitely want to get about Noah's Ark because a lot of people still believe.
Oh heck yeah, man!
Literally things, but because I just wish they would have just said, look, these things are allegorical and these things are real. These things were nobody from that era that was around Mesopotamia that didn't have anything to do with them talked about Jesus or anybody. And there are no grave sites of anybody from the Bible. Not one.
That part.
There's no record whatsoever about any of that stuff.
Part. Yeah,
I mean, if it's allegorical, tell me it's a story. And you tell a child, look, I was really old when I found out Santa Claus wasn't real. So I'm the most gullible. I was the most gullible kid in the world. I cried when I found out that Santa Claus was mom and dad, you know.
But it's a good story though, right? Because it changes human behavior. You do good, you get gifts.
I said, Mom, why would y'all do that to me? Make me look stupid in front of people that were younger than me. They go, you believe in Santa Claus? Ah! Anyway, and I said, why would y'all? She goes, honey, if we didn't do it, it would have been a problem. You know, you would have felt bad that you didn't get presents or whatever. And I said, why did you? I said, but so when I was asking questions about Jesus in the same way, and I asked about that, and nobody wanted to say anything. Mm-hmm. I said, what's the difference in Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy, and then the Jesus story? I said, but they were allegorical. They were stories. Isn't that a story? She goes, oh, no, that's all real. You know, so she learned that as a child. So that wasn't the person that I could have a conversation with, my own mom. So I yearned for conversation, not to try to prove anything, or it was just literally somebody that knew more than I had found. So we could, you know, do it together. And I don't think anybody I do a little scenario about if I tell you, if I have a suitcase and I put a watch in there and you didn't see it, but I know it's in there, it's facts, right? But only thing you can do is believe and guess. You don't really know. You can't possibly. Anybody says, I know there's a watch in there.
You don't know if you believe.
Believe is a belief. It's not a knowing. And I thought, well, you know, I know what I'll do if I walk up to somebody and smack them. I'm either going to get smacked back or shot or something's going to happen negatively. I don't think that, but anyway, the Noah's Ark thing really bothered me so much. It's like that was one of the things I talked about when I wrote a letter to my college president when I heard that I wasn't going to get my diploma. I was a few hours short, and they never wrote me back. And I listed things. I said, let's have a conversation. It was kind of a challenge, but it wasn't a challenge. It was like, These are the things that I've asked about. And people are saying, is Cylk an atheist? I'm like, first of all, no, because I know my God that I serve doesn't play games, and that's me. I said, that's a personal relationship. I said, when I read about the God in the Bible, I'm not allowed to ask questions about that. And I said, there's something about that. And it's like the Noah's Ark thing. I said, please, you don't have to be a genius to know that. Obviously, if Noah's Ark existed, they would have found it by now. Okay. And they tried to say it was in Mount Arafat. And they were like, well, we found this indention, no, there's no bones from any of these animals. Just the size of that. And Noah as 8 people going to replenish the world. This is a story, y'all. And I was told that no, it's true. God is, you don't understand God. I said,
so God murdered literally every man, woman, and child and animal on the entire planet.
To prove what?
And he knows all. So he would have known that this was all going to happen. He's a mass murderer on the grandest scale. Impossible.
Believe
God doesn't have the capacity to do that. If you really understand who God is pure love energy. That's it.
That's it in us.
Exactly.
That's how we
need a mediator. So exactly. And another good question that came up, because I've always talked about the whole Noah's Ark thing too, man, because it's just so ridiculous to me. Have you ever seen the picture where they compared the Ark to like the Queen Mary and the Titanic and like modern day cruise ships? Like it's like a fourth of the size. Like it's this little tiny thing. But one of the really great questions I never thought of, and somebody brought it up, was, okay, so you have all these carnivores on the Ark, right? Like, so what are they going to eat for 40 days, right? What are they eating? And then here's the best part. They're like, okay, so the boat finally goes and it lands wherever, right? Mount Arafat or whatever. And then the question was, what do those carnivores eat once they get off the boat? Because every animal is dead. There's nothing, like, what do they eat? Like
there's no plants.
The logistics is what got me. Yeah, there's no plant, there's nothing. Like, what do the herbivores eat? Like, that was what got me with that, was the whole logistics of the whole thing. I was like, it's an impossibility. It doesn't make any sense.
Feel, if you don't believe it, you're an atheist. And first of all, everybody is an atheist. If you don't believe in Zeus, well, you're an atheist. If that's what it ain't one God that you're an atheist about. Atheist. I think what I've learned, as you know, in the book, I interviewed a prominent atheist, and I was like, he says, and we were like, I was like, how did you go from a Christian to being an atheist? And he said, I couldn't answer questions that people would ask me. And my minister didn't talk to me. And I saw it was like about money at the church, and it wasn't about, they didn't care about really people. And I thought, if God wrote a Bible, it wouldn't be as difficult for all these people to read, it would be a perfect book. God is perfect. And I would ask, I want to see where Jesus was when he was from 10 or from 3 to 30. How do you act as a young man? I wanted to learn. I was asking these questions when I was 10. I was like, when Jesus was 10, did he like girls? They went, boy, shut up. What are you talking about? I'm like, golly, how am I going to? And I thought as I got older, well, that wasn't a bad question. It was like, how do you act about this or what? I wanted to learn. I wasn't trying to, I wasn't questioning God. I was questioning man. You know,
Exactly.
and I tell people all the time, I don't believe in mankind. I believe in God. I don't believe in mankind. I said, God is obvious. We wouldn't be moving and talking and having a brain and all these things if we didn't have God in us. So I said, everybody can name whatever you want to name, but you can't. What I have a problem with is when they brought the Bible and made it into the science class. It ain't gonna happen. It doesn't compute. It's
No.
Science. We try, as a scientist, you give it to other scientists that you think could punch holes in your program. Tell me what's wrong with it. Tell me if this is not right. You don't say you know this. It has to go through so much scrutiny. But a Bible question, oh no, can't talk about that. You just got to believe. What's your belief, boy? That never sat well with me, and I was never able to have a conversation with him. Just a conversation. They would, you know. And then I learned that question. Oh, so do you believe that the Bible is perfect? It's without flaw? And if they say yes, I'm like, okay, so hey, what do you want to eat? You know, what are you having for drinks? You know, it was done. They're not gonna hear. It ain't gonna happen. I tried to tell there was 11 or 12 exact same type stories of a person that came into an area thousands of years before Jesus, and 3 days, rose, did miracles. And I said, that was thousands of years before. I said, you got to look at the history of this.
Exactly.
And everybody didn't read. So they took advantage of that.
You know, it's funny because I struggled with that because I want to believe that there was a savior, a Jesus. Like I want that to be true. But with the information that I know, it doesn't. Everything for me is like a puzzle, right? And the puzzle pieces just don't go together, and especially with all these other stories. And so, you know, I was trying to justify it in my head. This is a long time ago, where I was like, "Well, did Jesus show himself to different cultures over the years, and then he showed himself, you know, in the beginning, like of the Christianity era, or?" Is the more logical answer that the Sumerians, the Babylonians, the Greeks, they all copied off of each other. They all made these stories up. And then in 325, Constantine stole the story and made the story up. That's much more logical. But I still, to this day, struggle with that because also, I don't know if we talked about this when we were talking with Angel, but you know, and Cylk, you know this too. We've talked about this, about the whole my research on near-death experiences and all that stuff.
Yes, very interesting.
Yeah. So many people talk about meeting Jesus when they go to the other side, and it's
supposed to come back though here.
So that conflicts with like these supposed stories and all that, and so. I wonder, are these people seeing what they want to see? But there's times where like a Muslim guy will die and he'll meet Jesus in heaven. You know, so I'm not 100% sure that Jesus isn't like there isn't some Yahweh or Yeshua like really exists, and it just got misinterpreted through all the Christian stuff, or what? Like I still don't know the answer to that.
What if the person that they're seeing when they go there is their soul?
Yeah, that's good. Themselves. But
yeah, because
what
Jesus
if it's just your higher self? What if all of us have the Christ within us? That's why he said that people would run to and fro saying it kingdom's over here. But he said the kingdom is within you, right?
Yeah.
And so what Constantine and them did, though, like the Roman Empire, it conquered so many different nations and nationalities and religions, and they're like warring within the kingdom. And he's like, hell, they're going to kill each other off unless I come up with one religion to unite them, right? And it wasn't that he was trying to save their soul. And he was like, okay, we're going to use Christianity. In 325, there wasn't a J in the alphabet, so his name wasn't Jesus.
No.
So,
but I didn't understand how when the Europeans came over to Africa and enslaved, so many people, but they brought in Christianity, and they got Africans to turn to be Christians, and they said, but how can you have the same God enslave you, and you're serving that God, and the slave masters are serving the same God? So they take these, and I'm like, how did they convince? How did that happen?
Total hypocrisy, man.
There wasn't no convincing. It's like, here's a gun.
We know that.
And you either do this or you're going. So yeah, let's talk about that part, because like Columbus sails in 1490. Well, last of his 4 voyages, 1492, right?
Yeah.
Or was that the first? So anyway, 1493. After he goes back and he tells them, hey, these people are docile. He said he found God's people because they were loving and humble, and they were greeting him with gifts. And he was like, we can enslave them, right? So
yeah.
Pope Alexander VI comes up with the Doctrine of Discovery, 1493, which stated that they can go out and discover any land that is non-Christian. So that made America like target number 1. And of course, all indigenous people around the world are into nature. And I want you to touch on that too, Cylk, because your story's great. So people are more into natural law and the natural harmony of everything, right? And they knew that. So it's like, in Christianity at the time was nothing but power and control.
And putting fear.
You're talking about the enemies of Jesus coming up with a religion. So you think they're going to paint him in the best light and make it liberating, or are they going to use it as a tool to oppress people? And that's exactly what has been done with it. And if people don't look, Dr. John Henry Clarke said it best. He says, these religions are no more than male chauvinist murder cults.
Basically, if they really read that, and they really read the Bible, like I said, most people don't read further than they've memorized a few verses, and I would say, all right, let's talk about that. How did you come to that? What did you read in the Bible that makes you feel this way? Those are the questions. I always said, if I could have a podcast, I would have a podcast just on that, and just on questions, and call it that, and just have people to come in. There's nothing to argue about. Why should I care what you believe in? I would want to know what you believe in so I can learn something that I don't know. Is really the reason. I'm not going to try to convince you to believe something that I believe. What? We didn't have this the same history. You went through different things with different cultures. And I always said, if we were born in Greece, we would be studying and loving their gods.
It's geographical.
It is geographical.
It's all geographical. And, that brings me to another point that, the resurgence with Christian nationalism, where they're slapping God onto their politics and their racism and all the bad things that are polar opposites of who Jesus was, right? Or the polar opposite of Jesus's teachings, which I fully believe in the teachings that he provided, whether or not he was real or whatever. His teachings are beautiful, and I, know what I mean? But Christian nationalism twists it all and makes it so it's their own agenda, and they actually strip people of freedoms and powers and everything else, and it's happening right now
in front of us.
They know that it's a tool of oppression and control. The 100%. KKK was a Christian organization.
Yeah.
Yep. All those
they would have church.
They all the Bible, dude.
Exactly.
But they would have church, a full church, and loving the Lord and singing songs, and come out and have a hanging right next to the church.
Exactly,
man.
And you can't tell me that the God that we serve would think that's okay. And they
Completely
take out
ungodly.
like those little places in Leviticus 25, I think it says, you enslave the foreigners. You don't slave your own people. Don't enslave the Hebrews. But that's a man talking. I mean, it just, if you don't ask the questions and you just assume whatever you've heard before, you become dumb. You don't learn anymore. Your ability to learn has just dropped so much because you've just stayed right here. So you think all the books in college, that's the only thing. Once you get that degree and you study those books, there's nothing else to learn. You can tell me, and nothing else to learn about that subject. You've made it. You graduated, so here's a degree, and that's why it's a lot of dumb people running businesses today
in our country.
Oh yeah, it's like, well, hell, you go to school at, like, I had a degree in business from teachers, not one of them owned a business. So it's like
teaching business.
They teaching business. So they're teaching theory, right? So it's like you have these people who go to theological seminaries, and they come out and they teach the word of God because Joe Schmo up the street blessed them with it's okay for you to
a human being.
Yeah, exactly.
I asked my minister one time, I said, Job, so God made a bet with the devil? And I said, but in my reading, it was the first time I read the whole Bible, first time at Montreat. And when I got through, I thought, wait a minute. The devil, Satan, hadn't killed anybody. The God of the Bible is the one that's killing thousands of people and babies and showing you how to kill a baby, throw it against the rocks. It's literally written. And I thought, I don't believe that. I don't believe that. That is, and I don't know what that means. Why would God describe how to kill a child? And why would you want to put Job, if he was the only one in that whole town of Sodom and Gomorrah, or two towns that was a righteous man? Why would you take him and kill his whole family and everything? But he gave you more. He gave you kids again. But those kids he killed. What? Why you? That's an example of what?
That takes me back to my research with near-death experiences, and I know that is the truth. Is when people die, their spirit leaves, the journey that they take, the experience that they have. That is the truth. That's the only truth that I can latch onto, right? And the one biggest thing I've learned is the fact that God is pure love, unconditional love energy. That's who God is. He does not have the capacity to be jealous or anger or murderous or punish. None of that doesn't exist within who he is. If you read these, and for those that don't know me, I've read thousands of these experiences.
Go ahead.
God's bigger than any religion, is my point.
Yes.
Yeah. And the thing is, if God is spirit or energy, why does God need a sexual gender?
He doesn't.
And he's not.
Why do we say he?
Yeah.
That's because he wrote the Bible.
Because
exactly. So it's still part of the brain. There's so many different parts that we have to learn how to release, right? So it's
and by the way, Russ, people, when they have these near-death experiences, when they're on the other side, almost all of them say that the divine spirit, the creator spirit that they have this telepathic conversation with, is neither man nor woman. They're both. There is no discernment between man or woman with this being, So, but it's the only reason we say he is because he wrote the Bible. Man wrote the Bible. Sure. Excuse me 1 second, guys. I'll be right back.
Okay. In Genesis, when the statement is, and then there was, like, there's no history. You're just supposed to take it. And then it clearly says made man in our image.
Exactly.
That's not one entity.
It's
Our
plural.
more than one.
Yeah.
So that goes back to, they forgot that they were Greek writers after that they believed in gods, the God of thunder, the God of the sea, the God of the mountains. And that's plural, and it's amazing how nobody wants to talk about that. I said our, but God is one. Who's he talking about? They're like, they won't even talk about it.
It was the angels.
Well, say it. And
that's the answer I got when I asked that question.
Oh my! This really got me about Adam and Eve. I said, okay, Adam and Eve had who? Cain and Abel, right? Right? Adam and Eve had Cain and Abel, correct?
Right.
Okay. They married and had children, right? Where did the women come from?
Dude,
They either had sex with Eve, and we all are from, if you really believe in that story, we all are from incest. I can't believe that.
Plus, genetically, it wasn't even possible, right? So
he went off and found a wife.
But no, there was nobody around. It's Adam and Eve, not
who?
Yeah.
So if you're talking about those, they don't even name the wives of the only 8 people left of the flood.
Yeah.
They just go, Ham, his wife, Shem and his wife. What? And then when certain people in the Bible, women, how they're treated, it's man-made, written. Now, it's if you look at that and you go, God wrote it, and that's what I believe. And I've talked to a lot of people, and I said, tell me why anybody, other nations around that area of the world, China was a little older than that, I think. India. There was a lot of countries around. Why didn't they know anything? And they were like, well, the Bible didn't get around that. It was hard for it to get around. I said, well, that man trying to get around, if God made it, it would be everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So why didn't anybody talk about what was happening during that time except the people that are in the Bible? Yeah. And if somebody says, I always tell them that, I'll say, tell me about this part in the Bible. And they'll say, well, it says in Matthew's. I said, no, you can't do that by going back to the Bible. You got to go to the source that's outside of the Bible.
Yeah, exactly.
No one talks about that from any area within that region. So, And anyway, Noah's Ark, where did the animals poop? the first day, just the from the smell alone, they would have died from methane poisoning.
I know, right?
Period. And the food, where you store the food for a year, almost a year, and I just don't understand how people, older folks, will allow it to get to this point.
Well, something, you bring up a good point, because that is the big argument today about the transatlantic slave trade, where they show the ship was packed like sardines. It's like they would have died within the first couple of weeks from like poisoning, right?
Yeah.
It's like women, their menses and no bathroom breaks, starvation. You're talking about 3 months on the choppiest ocean that there is. It was impossible for it to happen the way that they said it happened.
So many they threw overboard, though.
Yeah. Well, but it really didn't happen that way. And that's another story for another day, because the majority of them didn't come to North America anyway. They enslaved the people who were already here. Exactly.
And you know what? I know you've heard, both of y'all have heard this, that when they say, well, the Africans, they had slaves. And that's true. But they were enslaved not because of the race or color. They were enslaved because they didn't have any money. So they had to go and they were more like workers for this person or that person. And they had more than they did. And they shared more. And it was called slavery. But you can't equate that to.
Yeah. That's a whole nother bag of tricks. We'll have to tackle that one on another day.
I want to ask you guys something, because I get asked this and a lot. They'll say, well, do you think Black people can be racist? And I said, first you have to identify what racist means. I don't think anybody other than somebody that has power can be a racist. Otherwise, you're just saying racist statements. Anybody can call you names and stuff, but if you don't own the building that I want to get into, we're just back and forth calling each other names. But if you are the owner of the building, you say, I don't want any black people here. I don't want any white people here. That's racist. So to me, if you don't have any power, you're just making racist statements. I just think we've gotten that kind of out of control.
Yeah, I think that, and that's one that I want to do a whole podcast on that alone, right?
Oh,
because I think most people, both, and I'm gonna say black and white for the lack of a better word at this point, right?
yes.
Like my neighbor that lives 2 doors down is white. He is not a threat to me. He doesn't control whether or not I eat or anything like that. Even if he didn't like me, he would just be, say, biased or bigoted or whatever, right? But racism, especially here in America, is systematic. You know, and here's the kicker, right? You go back and you study history in this country. 1600s, when people were coming over here, race wasn't an issue. It didn't become an issue until the 18th century, right?
It wasn't even a subject.
And it was during Bacon's Rebellion. And if anybody really goes back and study the slave trade, when the Moorish Empire fell in 1492, these were black people who were controlling the oceans, the world. And these people, along with King James' son, they were black people. They weren't even white. And I've done podcasts.
Accept that.
Here's the whole thing is like, because of where we are now, right? Because white people were the ones who were being enslaved all the way up during that time when the Moors were there. Like the word slave itself comes from Slavic. The Slavic people were the slaves. And people, when they hear slave today, they automatically want to associate it with African people. But what happened is it was all these foreigners coming here going to war against the indigenous people who were here because they wanted this land.
Well, Europe was shambles. It was horrible. It was It was they had diseases. They gave a lot of the indigenous people when they kept, and they just horrible stuff. So
I want to come forward and close out and land my plane on what you were asking, right? So when you come here, you have blacks, whites, indigenous people. You have everybody got a chance to dance with this devil, right? Like you had Asian people who were on these plantations. So now you have the Bacon's Rebellion, right?
Yes.
And all
when
the
was
people,
that,
like it's around 1790, somewhere around there. Okay. Like you could just Google Bacon's Rebellion and you could read up on it because this is very pivotal. So what happened is all these people rallied together to fight against the elite who were cleaning their clocks and, pretty much just raping the country. And the money was going back to England, going back to Spain, etc. Right.
Right.
So they figured we're going to have to do something to stop this because they were outnumbered. Right. You know what I'm saying? So that's when they start going race based.
Right.
So then they're like, oh, so if you were a certain complexion or whatever, you were going to get enslaved like eternally.
Yes.
And that's when they start flipping it. And then what they start doing is giving poor whites a fake membership to the club. And so they became
$5.
You're poor, but at least you're not that.
Right. So what they did is created a buffer class between them and the slave. And it still continues to this day.
Yes, it does.
So what happens is you have white people today who get a privilege, but they're not in power. They're not all in their controlling all the legislation. Right. But you have some who were here since the 1600s and 1700s who struggled just as bad as the indigenous people, right?
Right.
And those people, that's why you'll see some white people who are just cool as hell because they came up totally different. They don't have all these racist ideologies and stuff. They hate the same people we hate. They hate the power structure just as bad as the other guy do, right? Yeah. But then you have some who are benefiting from the BS and they ride it out, right?
They've
So
inherited hundreds of acres of land.
exactly. So where the stuff really hit the fan was at the end of the Civil War, is when they opened up the floodgates and all the Eastern Europeans came in, and
They took
created
thousands.
they created the Klan, went to war, burned down all our cities. Like you start talking about Black Wall Street in Oklahoma, Rosewood, Chicago, Detroit. You go Wilmington, North Carolina, like all throughout Louisiana, everywhere where we had built up these great cities and had power and money. We're suited and booted, we were religious. We were doing well. We were married. We were the most married people in this country all the way up through the 70s.
Yeah.
Like we were very family oriented people.
Yep.
Very much so.
And they systematically destroyed it.
Through systems is how it got destroyed. So now we have the common Joe in at the job, black and white, and they're arguing against each other, and the same people are raping both of them.
That's what I don't understand, why they can't see that. And it's lynching, the lynching thing. There was more lynchings. 99% of the lynchings were made after slavery. It wasn't made.
During this time period I'm talking about.
They were afraid that now 4 million Africans are free, but they didn't have anywhere to go. So a week after slavery after the president signed Emancipation Proclamation, they said, "Oh, here's a new law, vagrancy. If you call it you don't have a place of residence, you're going to prison." So there's the free labor comes again. That's when you go right back into slavery.
To this day, that's how they enslave, is through the jail system.
Yes.
Yeah.
Free labor.
But you know something? You know something, guys? We could probably do another podcast on it, because all Black people weren't enslaved.
No.
There were so many Black people that were free, because like until the Civil War, right? Matter of fact, if you talk to 70% of white people, most of them, they can't trace their ancestry back before the Civil War. Most of them came after the Civil War. They weren't here. So if you look at the southeastern states, like especially Mississippi, Louisiana, Georgia, Tennessee, most of these states were probably about 80% Black.
And Native Americans.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And they look like me, and they look like him, and they were the copper colored tribe. So they want to tell us we all came from Africa, but when I trace my lineage, I don't have any Africans on my tree. We're from right here.
I don't understand the term African American.
Yeah.
Because we're not. I mean, I'm clearly not an African.
Well,
I'm an American, but why am I called an African American? Because I'm dark. There's Africans from Africa, and then when they move to America, that's an African American.
Elon Musk is an African American. Elon Musk is an African American.
Bam.
So it's a play on words.
He's gonna want reparations.
Yeah, they're giving you two continents, right? But it's like there's nations over in Africa. Where did you come from? Then they don't even tell you about Liberia, when the American Colonization Society was trying to send Black people to Africa. They were trying to get the free Black people off the land, right? So they talked some of them into leaving, but the majority of them didn't want to leave, because they're like, we're from here. Like all my ancestors are from here. We're not from Africa, right? And they went there and they colonized with the help of some of the European nations in the United States getting set up, right? Exactly. And they thrived for a minute until the Africans was like, they're not Africans. And to this day, they call them Amerigos.
I've heard that term.
Yeah, they're not. They knew we weren't African. So a lot of them, there was a big civil war. A lot of them came back and they were stripped of their American identity, and they came back as African.
Well, because they were slaved and re-slaved, the women, the Black women, were left to raise the child alone. So most of the men were in prison. So in the 50s and 60s, going in the 70s, you saw a lot of Black women, that a lot of men and boys and girls were raised by a Black woman. And then the term of lazy Black men was thrown around during that time. I'm like, how can you be lazy when you needed the slaves?
Yeah.
They're the ones that worked and did everything.
Exactly.
And it's like, white people did not want slavery. People are crazy to think that. I hate to hear Black people say, well, white people did. I'm like, no, that particular white person did that. That particular Black person did that. You can't put everybody in one thing. You crazy.
No, yeah. And the thing is that we need to do a podcast on that and get a diverse panel and have questions, right? Because it has to happen. It's the only way it's going to get resolved, because we're all caught up in this trick bag. We've been miseducated through the school system, through the religious system, through Planned Parenthood, through you just start naming it. It's like,
if people could just admit they don't know certain things instead of pretending to know or don't want to know the truth.
And open your mind to
stay
learning
with what they've learned when they were kids. That's a big problem. I've found that a lot of adults, they don't, it's like, well, what if I'm wrong? It's like, what do you mean? You have a personal relationship with your creator.
Well, that's where the fear of hell comes in, right? And if you look back at the early church, it didn't even exist. It was another one of those tools. And we talk about the Council of Nicaea. There were at least 9 ecumenical councils, and they were constantly adding, deleting, changing, morphing.
Right.
And for people to think today that this is untampered, and plus there wasn't even a Bible till you had a printing press. So it's like prior to that.
So you're telling me that my friends in Nova Scotia or Greece that or if they'd never heard of the Bible, that they're going to hell, they're going to die, because whoever didn't hear about the word of Jesus. And that's my thing with Christians. If they say stuff like that, I know they're not wanting to know any. They're not wanting to learn anymore.
What answer? Hold on one second, Scott. So what answer do you get when you ask that question about your friend in Nova Scotia that never heard of Jesus? Like, what happens to them?
They go, oh, well, it's what God can. He can do what he wants. He's God. He's omnipotent. He's this. They go there.
Miss me with that.
There's no place to talk. You know what I mean? They've made up their mind.
So
you
listen
can't
to
even
this
have a conversation. I said it stopped us thinking. We stopped thinking when you just on the religion.
That's
anyway.
right.
But we should have another.
Yeah. So back in the 80s, I asked a question. Like one day there was a fire drill at work, and there was this older lady. She's outside trying to save everybody's soul, right? God bless her heart, right? And she's just sitting there going in, and then she's asking me questions. So I'm like, I'm gonna ask her a question. So I'm like, so before Islam, Christianity, Judaism, like before there was a Moses, a Abraham, a Jesus, before all these people, we know man was still here. What determined whether or not they went to heaven or hell? She paused. She looked. Oh, they're all just waiting in this waiting room until the end of time. And then when Jesus returned, we're going to decide where everybody goes. So
I was asked, what if Jesus had already come and already been here?
That part. What if?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Scott, you had
wars and rumors of wars for a long time.
Yeah. We could go on and on that one. Scott, you had a question on that topic.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that I've had conversation with Christians, and the question that I would bring up is, so if you don't believe in Jesus, you go to hell. That's what you believe, right? Oh yeah, that's what I believe. All right, so this kid, he grows up in Iraq, right? And everything he knows about Western civilization is bad. They came, they destroyed my country, they murdered my family and all that stuff. But then this kid grows up to be a devout Muslim. He gives everything that he has for other people. He helps other people. He loves. He's compassionate. He has empathy. All those things that Jesus talks about that you should be, right? And then so he loved his God, and then he dies, his spirit goes to wherever, and God says, sorry, bro,
You can't come in.
you didn't worship Jesus, so you're gonna burn in the eternal hell. Like, does that make any sense to you at all? And of course,
If you're a
well,
child,
everybody has the chance. I was like, so do you think that someone in Iraq and somebody comes and says, oh, Jesus this and that, the Western God, that if somebody came to you and said that Muhammad was the right person here,
you
you'd
say
be
no.
like, you know what I mean?
And they would call you an atheist.
Exactly.
You would be an atheist.
And by the way,
You
I've
didn't believe
had
in
that
that
happen to me
God.
too.
That's all it
Come
is.
on. I've had people say, oh, you must be an atheist because I talk about near-death experience and the fact that the Bible is whack.
Oh,
Especially the Old Testament is just filled with stuff that's baloney to me, right?
bloody.
Oh, you're an atheist. No, I don't believe in God. I know there's a God, and I, with all my heart, love, and I know he loves, and he's nothing like this book tells you.
Man-made.
You know? So yeah, this is one of my biggest arguments, man.
So guys,
that's a whole. We can do a whole thing on just.
Yeah. We're gonna come back to this.
The first 4 was about serving him. What about slavery's not good? Don't beat children. Don't kill your kids. What about all the? None of that was. So I said, man made this.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll talk more about that.
So, and then they tell you that God loves you more than your mother, 10 times more than your mother. There is
don't
nothing
love him before your mother.
But there is nothing I could do,
Can't do
that would have had my mom ready to burn me in hell forever in a day like that. it is impossible.
Well,
so that alone let me know that they're out. So while we're on this topic, I want to wind
Abraham
down.
and Isaac, we got to do something on that. He was gonna kill his son, man.
Yeah.
I believe it. All right.
Yeah. Who would pull a trick? Yeah, exactly. Who would pull a trick like that? In your book, you mentioned that, and I love that part, right?
Yeah.
So let's kind of wind down. I like to leave people with solutions because I'm sure people who are diehard Christians probably either tuned off or ready to start sticking pins in the screen or whatever. But let's well, no, it's not like that. It's like let's talk about, like, Scott, you mentioned, what you feel God is. Can you go in a little bit more? Let's give our own definitions of what we think God is and what love is.
I know what God is, man. He, like I said, he's pure unconditional love. And according to all my research, and this is the thing, the things I say about this, these aren't philosophical, man. This is actually based on research that I've done. And like I said, people have died and left their body and their spirit goes somewhere and has this experience. That is the truth.
That's real.
It has to be, because Amal, we were talking about this a long time ago. When you read 50 of them or 100 of them, you don't see it. But when you have read thousands of them, you start seeing all these commonalities.
Yes.
And it comes from every walk of life, every religion, atheists, gay people, every single walk of life, they all have these core commonality experiences, they all say, I was home, and they realize that we've been there before and they've existed forever and all this stuff.
Spirit.
And so that for me is the facts, right? And God is simply, and that's the beauty of it. It's so simple, man. Yes. God is just pure, unconditional love. He loves us more than anyone can ever imagine. And people say that the love I was feeling was 1,000,000 times more than any love that I've ever felt in my life. And I was home, and it was complete acceptance, and the whole life review, which is also incredibly simple, but makes total sense, is when they have a life review, they're not looking at through their eyes. They're looking at everything through the other person's eyes that they affected. And if people would realize that that's how this world really actually works, man, it changed my life when I realized that every interaction I have with every person, I'm going to relive that at some point. And I'm going to know if I brought that person joy or if I brought them sadness, right? And so it makes me want to just create joy for everybody that I come across. except for people that are just evil, and I don't care. I struggle with that too. But anyways, Russ, that's my definition of God, is just pure unconditional love. And the thing that he teaches us, by the way, in almost this is one of the huge commonalities, is God wants us to love unconditionally, which is impossible for a human, but as close as you can get. He wants you to be compassionate towards others, especially the marginalized, the people that don't think like you, the people that don't look like you. He wants you to have compassion and empathy. And Elon Musk said empathy is weakness. Dude,
that tells you who he is.
Exactly. And then finally helping others. And that doesn't necessarily mean like big, huge gestures. It means opening a door for someone that's struggling to get through the door, helping somebody across the street, smiling at someone, complimenting someone. Those are the things that the spirits rejoice in. And by the way, they could care less about any of your material stuff that you've accomplished in your life.
That's right.
It's completely irrelevant. The house you have, the car you have, the awards you've won, all that stuff, completely irrelevant, man. What they rejoice is when you smiled at someone and made them feel good. That's
bingo. People remember how you made them feel.
Exactly. And you relive that when you pass away and you go to the other side. You actually live your whole life. You have a review of your entire life, and you see your interactions with other people and how you made them feel, dude. And not just people, animals, everything within your life, because we're all connected. We're all one.
We are all
spirit on the other side. So anyways, Russ, that was a little more long-winded than I wanted, but
that's Cylk.
Well, what to me, I don't have to say God because man said you got to do this or say that. I say creator because that's my environment that I grew up in. It encompasses everything that a man can't make or do is God. And that if it encompasses everything that we can't do, then it's not a person. Why would you, the creator, you limit him to give them human traits? Like you're gonna, that's what you think of an ultimate creator. You know, that's all we did. We try to make things like what we think and feel. Like when we're with animals, we try to. I train dogs as a hobby. I've been doing that since I was 8 years old. It's one of my best things I wish I could do that and still eat. But the point is, you find out how that dog thinks and lives and goes through life. Then you can work with them. If you try to make them do what you do, it doesn't work that way. And they never will get the ultimate of what they can give you. Anyway, but God to me encompasses everything, especially love, especially those things. And if we're made in his image, then he gave us love. He gave us the wonder, the thought, how do you think about things? And I know it says don't judge, but it doesn't say don't judge. It says if you judge, you will be judged. Judge not, lest you be judged. It doesn't say you better not judge. You better make some judgments.
But, and by the way, if I may, just real quick, this is so important, man.
Yes.
In these life reviews, every single person says the same thing. They say that I was not being judged. I was judging myself in my pure spirit form. So there's no hiding behind any excuses or anything. You're in your pure spirit form. And that is a huge thing for me is, you know, in the Bible, it says you're going to be judged and you're going to decide if you're going to go to hell or heaven or whatever. That's not the truth. The truth is you're judging yourself because the reason we're here is to evolve our spirit. That's why we're here, to learn. It's a school. In fact, when you do bad things in these life reviews, the spirits will tell you, hey, there's no right or wrong. You're just learning. This was a learning experience that you had. Russell, you've said this a million times that we're spiritual beings having an earthly experience, a human experience. That's exactly what it is. And then when you go to the other side, you learn from this path, this most recent life that you had, you learn from it. You know, anyways, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you didn't interrupt. that's I mean, it all encompasses what we're talking about. So I'm sure
Exactly.
a lot of the audience has questions, and I hope they do. But you questions without hating anybody, without getting upset because you don't have the answer. It ain't necessarily about getting answers. I found that the questions are just as important as the answers, because when you question things, it makes you ponder, and you talk to other people and you figure it out then. You know?
Exactly.
But you gotta be open. A lot of people are not open for that, you know.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Russ,
So-
how about you?
So to piggyback off what you were saying, Scott, because I always say that we are eternal spiritual beings having a temporary physical experience that we call life. So in Cylk, you're an actor, right? So and Scott, you're speaking of reincarnation, right? So and people have these life reviews. So you get to feel the pain of the girl you pulled her pigtail in 3rd grade. You get to feel how you hurt her. You get to feel how you brought your parents joy with the good things that you've done, right? So you get to feel all this stuff. And so in the Egyptian mystery systems, they talked about the laws of Mayat, right? You get to see whether or not your heart weighs less than a feather, right? And that all decides whether or not you come back and reincarnate and continue on your soul journey to learn, right? Because a lot of us are either old souls or young souls, right?
Right.
And we're still learning, and there's always redemption on the other side, right? So if God loves me more than he loves my mother loves me, there's always going to be redemption, right? So Cylk, one movie you're playing Joe Blow, the next movie you're playing this character, this one. So each character you're learning something different, right?
Correct.
So your soul journey is just a different reincarnated life, each character that you play. So Cylk is the soul, the character is the incarnation.
That's
good.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So by time you reach to where you're at now, you're like, well, I've mastered it all. I've mastered soul. I've mastered anger. I've learned how to love at the highest level. I learned, you know what I'm saying? And my heart weighs less than a feather. Now you're in heaven at that point, because you may not even want to come back to this physical. You might just want to be the breeze in the wind that's like, psst, psst, you're going the wrong way.
Right.
Change. You know, and it's like, because you could be anywhere and everywhere at the same time. So when I think of God, right, I had a conversation with a buddy of mine, and I never forgot it. He said, Russ, you can't even think of the Most High without thinking about energy, right? Because energy is the only thing that's never been created nor destroyed, right?
Everything's energy. Literally.
Everything has energy, whether it's your phone, a rock, a piece of glass, every human being. Everything has energy. So it's like energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It just moves and changes shape and form. Meaning you always were and you always will be. And that's why they say you were in the image of the creator. Your light body is that energy body that connects you to the creator, that gives us a spark of life, that gives us creative ability, because you are a child of the creator of the universe.
I'll leave you with this one. People ask me, well, okay, if you don't believe in this or that or whatever, then where are you going to go when you die? How do you know where you're going to go when you die? I said, same place I was before I was born.
Exactly.
Where were you before you?
Thanks.
They look at me like, anyway, hey, you want to get dinner? No, but and then the thing about that religion, period. If people would not get caught up in it, if they would just dissect it like you would dissect something that you get at the store, we break that down. Oh, no meat byproducts. You know, why not do that with your soul and where you're going, where you feel, and how you treat people? To me, we're right here. We're alive now, okay? And I can care about you all now.
Exactly, man.
Not promise tomorrow. And it's we got so much more in common than we ever will not. It's just if we would allow that to be opened up And I think questions will allow people to, and that's all I wanted to do. I'm not trying to run for office. Definitely ain't trying to run for office. I can't lie. I got to tell you the truth. Exactly. I can stretch the truth, but I ain't lying to people. So, but this has been really, really awesome that we were able to talk like this, and nobody got angry. Nobody called anybody names. And I'd always say this. I promise this is the last thing. People say, well, where are you going to, if you don't believe in the Bible stuff, where do you get your morals from? I said,
right here.
Who raised you, first of all?
Who raised you?
Determine a lot of that. But God gave you, as a baby, gave you everything you're ever going to need. It's who's surrounding that baby, how you nurturing that child. And you can be raised in the most godly environment. But if you don't treat that baby a certain way, it ain't going to come out the way you think. And it's like, that's what I believe. And that's what I felt. And I've watched babies, and I put this in the book. I've watched toddlers share their food and toys. They didn't read a book to say that sharing is a good thing. Man. It made them feel good. We have natural instincts. You stop believing in yourself when you just only going to believe what this book says. This book that's been rewritten. You're going to trust that before what's happening today.
Exactly. And by the way, how many different Christian religions are there? I read one somewhere. There's tens of thousands, right?
Thousands.
It's infinite. Because you can't possibly know, because we don't know how many people are in the earth.
And by the way, that whole you got to be a Christian to have morals, that's just another pinpoint of control. That's all it is. The powers that be, man, they don't want us to know that God is within us. They don't want us to know that we don't need that mediary. You know what I mean?
I'm glad you said that. You guys, if you haven't already, check out the Ethiopian Bible. That is about
Jesus. We'll talk about that.
That was taken away from the King James. These are things that they didn't tell us. And that's not the same Jesus. Jesus is real.
Jesus said that God is within. He's within you.
That's right. He didn't say you got to be a Christian. He didn't say, none of that.
No.
Yep. And just ask a couple of people questions like, hey, do you know if there's any grave sites from anybody from the Bible, or do you think Jesus and the devil, was that a story? Is that real? And then you can ask without threatening. And that's what I like. That's what I hope this book does. It creates dialogue where you haven't had dialogue.
Dude, I'm so happy that you wrote that, because it was so insightful and it touched on so many subjects that I love to talk about, but a lot of people are afraid to talk about it, and maybe it'll open up their minds and make them ask questions.
I hope so.
No,
so
you're great, man. Russell.
It was
when are we going to be able to purchase this book, and where?
January, right?
I'm gonna come back on the show and tell you that.
Let's do it, brother. Let's do it.
In a few weeks. The publisher wanted me to put some interviews that I conducted over my years, because I talked to atheists, ministers of all different denominations, and everybody that thinks the way they think, and it's kind of eye-opening. And a lot of ministers that are preaching today, they know the truth. But they say, you think I need to feed my family. If I told them what I really felt, I was like, but aren't you leading people down the wrong way? People will look at ministers like after God.
Charlatans, man.
And I felt bad for how many people have died believing certain things are literal, and when they didn't have to believe that. If you just tell them this is a story over here. Now this happened because they put a little bit of, there's world history and there's biblical literature. Ain't the same.
Yeah.
Not the same. Anyway, so those things I think would be a good subject.
Yeah,
for sure.
Definitely. Hey,
hours, man.
Yeah, whenever you're ready to do this again, guys, let's do it. We could even throw Angel back in the mix. We could get
that'd
all
be fun.
here and chop it up.
Ama, you would love Angel.
I'm sure. I love her. How am I not going to love her?
Yeah, it's got
Angel's in him. I love him too.
His real name is James.
He's a good guy.
I always call him Angel.
Maybe
So
my beer, Country Roads, that I'm owner with Rick Clark, will be out by the next time. It's we're gonna be on the East Coast.
yeah, man, we got so
Country
much.
Roads, take me
Yo,
home.
we have to do this again soon. Because we got so much more we got to cover.
Yes.
You do music, you do plays.
I have a genius in my office right now. Frankie Shedrick. He's played with the Temptations. He's a drummer and bass player. He graduated at this wonderful school.
Hey, we might have to have you guys play live, man.
Full Sail. He was like the top dog there.
There you go.
And his mother's a minister.
Wow.
We know about those preacher kids.
Well, women wasn't even allowed in the pulpit until 1970, 71.
That's a whole nother conversation.
Oh, let's go. I'm ready. Hey, thank you.
So,
thank you very much.
Oh no, thank you, Scott. Thank you guys for joining me. We definitely have to do this again. We don't have to wait until it's time for the book. We'll try to squeeze another one in because there's so much more we need to cover. But hey, everybody,
people would call in or write in with their questions, kind of thing. Whoever.
No, we're gonna go live. We're gonna go live next time.
Oh, great.
We're gonna go live
right.
next time. Yeah. We're gonna go live next time so that we can, because I think that would be fair. Because I'm sure people have a lot of questions, and
they just don't want other people to know that.
Yeah,
I found out most people go to church so that other people see that they're at church. Not because, and the music and the energy is what they're feeling, and they might think it's God's spirit. It doesn't mean that that's God's spirit.
It's a
people
show.
Get moved at church, you know.
Yeah, so, just like, well, my mama used to get moved off of an Al Green song. Al Green song came up, so it's like the spirit.
So this guy asked me just yesterday. He's like, just out of the blue, he's like, "What's your favorite song?" And I just wrote back, "Let's Stay Together" with Al Green. Yeah, and then he actually played. He played the song, like he played the guitar and sang that song and sent it to me.
Now that's cool. If you ask me, it's "What's Going On" by Marvin Gaye. That's mine.
Oh yeah.
Of course, Russ.
There you go. What's my favorite song? Oh man, I'm a Jonathan Butler fan, man.
Oh, I love
him. It's like
West Africa. I mean,
he's from South Africa, man. And I fell in love with his music years ago because I felt that it was a story of triumph. Here's a guy who was born in an apartheid system in South Africa, but he manages to sing about love.
I know.
I love that,
man.
Isn't that proof right there?
Yeah. So to me, that it's just triumphant, right? And to this day, I love Jonathan Butler's music, man.
A lot of people never even heard of him. It'd be a treat. Yeah. Everybody hearing this, go get Jonathan Butler.
I'm about to check him out right now.
There you go.
There you go. But hey, guys, man, I don't even want to get off, but it's like I really appreciate you guys coming on. We definitely have to do it again. Ladies and gentlemen, Cylk Cozart, Scott Moesta, aka Skizzy. And until next time, everybody, peace.
Peace.
Love you, my brothers.
Love you guys.
Love you too, man.
All right.